You're listening to Beyond the Measure, episode 46. Listen as I, a young choir director, and my husband, a young composer, interview other music educators in order to gain insight into their own success in the classroom. We have a lot to learn, and we want you to learn with us. No matter your age, ensemble, or experience, this is the ideal podcast for music educators, composers, and students alike. So join us as we go beyond the measure.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Beyond the Measure, a podcast for music educators. My name is Christian, and if this is your first time joining us, this is a show where me and my wife, we interview a bunch of different music educators to learn everything we can from them so that you can learn from them as well with us. So at the time of recording this, it is, the second week of January, and so we are now into the new year, 2025. I hope all of y'all have had a wonderful start to the new year. We truly have, and so we're really excited to see what this year is going to bring. I also hope y'all have been enjoying season 2 of Beyond the Measure so far. We're officially halfway through the season now, and so we'll have a few more episodes releasing all the way through about mid to late April or so. And so we're really, really excited to bring you those interviews going forward. This episode is going to be a little bit different than usual. This is one of the few episodes where we will not actually feature a guest, and that is because I actually wanted to talk about a subject that I feel like is one of the only subjects that I am actually somewhat qualified to actually talk about. And that subject is all about commissions. That is, commissioning a composer to write your group music. I was thinking a few months ago, I was like, this would actually be a really great subject to talk about, because I feel like, I don't know, but I feel like if I were in the shoes of a music educator, if I was directing a choir or an orchestra or whatever, and I had, especially if I had never commissioned a composer before, I feel like, at least for me, it would be a little intimidating, just because you see all these composers doing all these big events and these big premieres and things, and I feel like if I were in the shoes of a teacher, I might think, well, can I even have access to a composer? Like, how does that even work? How complicated is it? What does that look like? That's just me. Maybe that's not you. I don't know. But for me, that's probably what I would think. And so I thought, you know what? In case there are any other music educators out there that might be similar to the way that I would be thinking about it in that circumstance, then I definitely want to make a little episode. So this definitely won't be nearly as long as our other episodes when we're interviewing a guest, but I definitely wanted to be able to kind of give you a little bit more in-depth information about what this can look like. And so maybe eventually you could commission a composer yourself, because it's a really, really great experience. So jumping on in, I kind of just divided up how I'd want to talk about this into 3 simple points. Number 1, what is a commission? What is it? Number 2, why is it important? Why should you do it, right? And then, of course, how do you do it? So I'm just going to go through those 3 points and kind of explain each one. And hopefully by the end of this, if you've never commissioned a composer before, it's at least kind of in the back of your mind as a thought of, oh, maybe I'll do this someday going forward. So first of all, what is it? Okay, so if for whatever reason you're not familiar with what a commission is, maybe you've heard the term before, or maybe you're, just going into college studying music education, you've kind of heard that before. A commission is simply the service of you as the teacher, or you honestly don't even have to be a teacher, it could be anybody, paying a composer to write an original piece of music or maybe an original arrangement so that you or whoever you're commissioning the music for can perform the music for the very first time. So that would be what would be considered a world premiere. They will be the very first people to ever perform it. And so since you are the one that is initiating the creation of that music, you are the one that gets credit for that piece, coming into existence from the beginning. Composers will include you or the ensemble that commissions them as like a credit for, this was commissioned by blank ensemble in order to show, hey, these are the guys that made this happen. And I think that's a really cool thing, because it's a way that you can essentially immortalize you and your ensemble, because, assuming that the music still continues to, exist and be performed for years and years and years on end, you and your ensemble, y'all's name will always be at the top of that music. And so that's a really, really cool thing that you have been able to immortalize yourself in your group. It's kind of a fancy word, but that's essentially what it is. For years and years, people will be able to perform that piece and say, wow, this group in this city were the ones that commissioned this piece, the reason that this piece came into existence, that we're able to perform it right now in this day and age. So that's just kind of a really cool thought to think about that. Now, why is commissioning a composer to write original music for you, why is it important? Well, there's a few different things. Well, number one, it makes your students feel special. This is an incredible experience for them to know that they are the ones that have the privilege of being the very first people in the entire world to put on this music, to be the ones to present this music to the world for the very, very first time. And because of that, at least from what I've seen, the times that groups have commissioned me, I feel like it really motivates the students to work harder too, because they have that extra added responsibility of being the ones that are basically giving the world the first impression of what this music is like. And on top of that, not just the world, but the composer themselves, right? If they know, wow, there's a person out there that specifically wrote this for us, well, we want to make sure that we can work as hard as we can in order to really please them and their expectations and do the best that we can to bring this piece to life. And so that's a really, really great thing to give them that motivation to work even harder and be much more focused on doing their best with the music. On top of that, everyone is learning something new, not just the students. You, as the educator, are also learning, and you should tell your students that it's a great opportunity to really communicate to your students and say, hey, y'all, I'm learning this music for the first time with you guys. This is not like a piece that I've been able to study for, months and months, or one that I've done in years past. Like, no, we are all in this learning together. And so there's lots of great opportunities to show your students that you are still learning as a teacher, especially in those times where, maybe you're looking at the music and the students are like, what should we do with this? Should we breathe here, or should we crescendo this or carry, or what do you think? And maybe you as the educator might be like, I'm not too sure, since we're literally the first ones doing this. So there's not really another recording or another teacher that I can ask to see what they did. We're the first ones. So maybe that's something we talk to the composer about, and that's something we can discuss together as a group. And so there's lots and lots of opportunity to have those sorts of moments where all of y'all come together as learners. And I think that's a great thing for your students to be able to see that you yourself are in similar shoes as they are. We're all on the same playing field. Another great opportunity that is, in my opinion, very easy to forget about, but it's a really big one, might seem obvious to some, but this is an incredible opportunity for your students to actually learn about composing and what that looks like. Because I know that so many schools, unfortunately, don't have the ability or the opportunity to have any sort of composition course or club or music theory class. There isn't a whole lot out there that really allows students to learn much more about what does composing look like? How do you do it? How do you even begin to start? And so being able to work with a composer directly and even have the composer come and visit you and your students and talk about what the composing process looks like is a very, very valuable opportunity to show them what is possible. And again, I mentioned it a little bit earlier, but the fact that you can humanize the composer, it's not just a piece of music that they were just handed, but when they know, wow, this person actually wrote this, I don't know, there's some sort of connection to reality that really, I think, would be very beneficial to a student that might be considering wanting to learn more about composing. I know for me, and this is coming from someone that now is a composer, right? But there was still a time where even when I was wanting to compose music, especially as a young high school student, I was like, I don't even know where to start. Like, how does this even work? How do people do it? Like, I do not know what I do not know, right? And so I think having access to a composer and being able to have an experience like that would be a great opportunity for students to really see, okay, so that guy did this. And so if he can do it, well, then I can at least start doing something similar to what he's doing or she's doing. And that's just a great way to really have an inciting moment for that. Obviously, as a composer myself, this is very, very important to me. Like I want students to be able to see what it looks like to compose music, because I want to educate students on the beauties of composition. I want to see more students start composing as they are younger. And so something that I actually do, that I try to do whenever an ensemble commissions me, or at least especially like a middle or high school level ensemble, is that I will actually record a series of short videos of me as I am writing the music for them. And so up to the very, very first blank page. So like I'll literally record myself writing those first couple notes of what are eventually going to become the entire piece. And so I will do a few of these. I usually do around 8 to 10 or so. And each of them are like 5 minutes or less on average. And then once I actually deliver the music to an ensemble, I'll actually bundle the music and the videos all together, so that not only are they going to just have new music, but they can literally, maybe like once a day or once a week, watch a 5-minute video of me in the process of writing the music that they are now holding in their hand. And so I feel like that's a really cool thing that would have really benefited me, especially as someone that was wanting to learn more. Kind of a nice way to just see, well, what does that even look like? It's nothing that's super heavy focused on music theory necessarily. I do have some music theory little tips and vocab in there every now and then if it comes up, but my main focus is like really just, I want to show y'all what this looks like. And so that's kind of how I do that. So far, the groups that I've done that for have seemed to really enjoy it, and I've had a lot of positive feedback. So yeah, that's just kind of how that looks like for me and how I integrate that. And then finally, on a more practical side of why commissioning a composer is important, is it allows you to actually get music that fits the needs of your ensemble specifically. Because when you commission a composer, and again, this might vary depending on the composer you work with, but at least from my own experience, to me, my view is that for me as the composer, I am here to serve you as the educator. It's not the other way around. I don't need some ensemble to feed my ego, right, by performing one of my pieces. No. I want to create something that is going to help you and your students be successful and have an incredible experience that all of y'all are going to remember for the rest of your life. And one of the best ways that I enjoy doing that is by allowing you, the educator, say, hey, this is what I am needing. I am needing a piece for this instrument, and this instrument, or these voice parts. And my ladies are very strong, but I don't have a lot of guys, so I don't want any DVC in that part, or whatever that looks like for you. Or I want a very joyful piece, or I want a very somber piece. I want you to have full customization of what you are needing, especially when it comes to ranges of your singers, or difficulty, or certain rhythms that that your group needs to have or needs to grow in, or maybe needs to avoid. I mean, whatever that looks like, I want to do whatever I can to create a piece that is perfect for what your group is needing right then and there. I know that a lot of ensembles struggle with finding repertoire that is exactly what they are needing, right? I know, at least in the choir world, I don't know as much about like with band or orchestra, but I know in the choral world, middle school boys music is very hard to come by, or at least high quality boys music that isn't super boring or something like that, right? Or very stereotypical. And so I have really enjoyed writing pieces that kind of fit that need. I have a piece called Rising Storm and another one called We Will Rise that kind of fits that niche, although other voicings can sing it as well. But that's kind of my thought process behind those. But that's just an example of how that has looked in the past. Now, with that being said, I actually have worked with multiple groups who said, hey, we don't care. Like, write whatever you write, do whatever comes to your mind and your heart, and we will perform it. And hey, that's just as fun too. So on the flip side, maybe you don't have a specific need for what your group does. You just want to do something brand new and kind of see what the composer pushes out for you. And hey, that is totally fine. So that is totally up to you. So those are just a few reasons as to why I believe that being able to commission a composer for your ensemble is really important. Really, really great way to give you and your students a new experience that maybe they've not had before, or at least an experience that is going to look different every single time. And I was going to say also, if you have the capability to easily commission composers over multiple years in a row, hey, be sure to commission a variety of composers. That's the other beauty of it. No two composers are the same. Every single person is going to be different, not just their musical style, but how they work with you and how they work with the ensemble and the sort of insight and wisdom that they can bring into the composition process. Just a really cool thing, something that I always enjoy doing as well. I love learning from other composers and seeing how they work and how they write. Now, moving on to our final point. Okay, so we talked about, okay, what is a commission and why is it important? Why should you do it? But then maybe the most important question of all is, okay, but how do you actually do it? How does it work? So again, this is where I feel like if I was a teacher and I'd never done it before, I'd be like, well, where do I even start? So where do you start? You start by contacting the composer and say, hey, how do I do a commission? It's that simple. And again, I'm talking from my own personality. Like for me, I'm the kind of person where it's like, I'd be kind of nervous to like reach out to a composer or whoever that I really thought was really good or really looked up to. But so I just say that from my own personality. Like I'm telling myself like, hey, just reach out to them. And so if you don't know who to even reach out to, like what composers I even reach out to, well, pick a composer that you have sung their music before, that is still living, that you really like, and just reach out to them. Even if it's, somebody super, super big that you think, oh, I don't even know if I'd even be able to afford them. Hey, that's okay. Just reach out and ask. And that's a great place to start. And so reach out to the composer, and trust me when I say that every single composer wants to be able to work with you. Maybe I shouldn't say every single one, that's too general, but 99% of composers want to work with as many ensembles as they can. I can't think of a reason, a composer wouldn't want to work with anybody to create music, because that's what we're all in it for. And so they're going to communicate with you, and they're going to give you all the information they can about how their process works. And this is where I come to the first little, not caveat, but I guess first little asterisk. So especially here going forward for the rest of the episode, what I'm about to talk about, I'm primarily basing this off of my own process, but just keep in mind that the process of how a commission works might vary a little bit depending on the composer, because each composer is going to have their own set process on how they do things, how they work with directors and things like that. So just keep that in the back of your head. I'm just kind of going based off of how I work and what I have done. So I'm not necessarily speaking for every single other composer that is out there on this. So what happens if, for example, you reach out to me and say, hey, Christian, I kind of want to commission you to write some music for my ensemble. What do we do? How does this work? So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to actually schedule a time to book a phone, or even more preferably like a Zoom or video call with you, because it's one thing to send out an email with some, instructions or how it could work. But to me, I just want to really be able to talk to you in person to kind of tell you what my process looks like, but also just so that I can get to know you and you can get to know me better, and really just kind of break down those internet barriers right from the beginning. So because to me, we're all in this together. This is not just me putting together some product from far away and sending it to you. Like, no, this is a thing that we are doing together. And so I really want to be on the same page of who we are and how we do this. So essentially, how it's going to work is that we're going to talk about what is it that you are looking for. And this kind of goes back to what I said earlier. Do you need a specific type of piece? Do you need a specific voicing, a specific instrumentation? What is that going to look like? And so we can get into as specific as we need for that. But also, the other big question is, why are you wanting to commission a piece? I mean, what is the reason? There could be a variety of reasons. Maybe you just want that new experience for your students. Maybe you are needing something specific as far as rep goes. Maybe some sort of event is going to happen or already happened, good or bad, and you're needing a piece to help contribute to that or to express what was going on. And so it really just depends. And to me, that is very, very important to know, because that is going to inform how I write the music and my mindset going into the music. It's one thing to write a piece of music for a group that's needing a specific kind of choice piece for contest, and another group that's needing a piece to commemorate a beloved teacher that passed away or that is retiring or something. Those are two very different things. And so those are, at least to me, very, very important factors that I want to know about when I go into the writing process. And then the other big details that we're going to have to sort out is, of course, when are you wanting to premiere the piece? And then by extent, okay, when are you premiering it? But then when do you actually need the final music in hand? When does it need to be completed by? And so if you haven't already thought of those things previously, that'd definitely be something you at least want to kind of have an idea of going into that meeting. Again, for me, I'm pretty flexible. I'm like, hey, if you don't know specifics, but we definitely want it by maybe like late by the end of this month in the year or by this season or whatever, that's totally okay. And then we can work those out as we get closer. I'm pretty flexible with that. But again, might look a little different with other composers. And so then, of course, finally, once you have talked to the composer and really communicated and really think, okay, I think this is something I want to do, then comes the contract, right? Most composers are going to have some sort of form of written agreement, basically just agreeing that, okay, in exchange of services, right? Money for services, you're going to pay me in exchange for me writing a piece of music for you. This is how much you're going to pay me. This is what I am writing for you specifically, and I'm going to get it to you by this date. And again, this is something that for me, I try to make it pretty simple. I don't like the whole big, fancy, intimidating jargon of contracts, and I just want you to be able to understand what it says, because that's the way I am, right? Just keep it nice and simple, short and sweet. We'll be fine. That's how we do the contract process, at least for me. And so then, once that is all set in stone, I, as the composer, I write the music. And sometimes it takes a long time. Other times it takes a short time. Other times it has to be a short time, depending on when the deadline is, right? What we discussed. And so it's always an adventure up to that point, because now it's the process of writing new music that has never been heard before for a specific ensemble. And so that is whenever I record myself and do all that as I'm writing. And so then finally, once the deadline comes, I'm going to deliver the music to you on or before the deadline. And so now the rest is up to you and your ensemble. And so now you can learn the music, and we're back to everything that I kind of talked about at the beginning, what that process of learning new music is and all the sorts of educational opportunities that come with that for your students. Now, there's one big factor in this whole process that I have not yet talked about that I'm especially if you're the average music teacher, that I am sure you have already thought about, and that is, okay, this all sounds great. That all sounds fine and dandy, and I would love to do it. I am all on board. In fact, I've always wanted to commission a composer, but I can't afford it. I don't have a budget. I have almost no budget. I know. The fine arts, we all know that's a discussion, right? It is hard to pay for anything. And I know, because I'm married to a music teacher, that you got to pay for a lot of stuff out of pocket too. So obviously, I'm not here to tell you what the cost of a commission is, because it varies from person to person, from composer to composer, and depending on the size of the project and what that looks like. So there's no way for me to really tell you what specific cost would look like. But what I will say is that a lot of times there are a lot more options for making a commission affordable than you might realize. And I've said it 100 times at this point already, but I'll say it again. This will vary depending on the composer, on what options are available as far as payment goes. But all I can do is kind of tell you what options I give to educators and to people that are commissioning me, whatever the circumstance, on how they can pay for this commission. So first of all, typically, when it comes to general payment, what I ask for, and again, I'm pretty flexible on this, but what I ask for is to have at least 25 to 50% of the cost paid for up front, and then the remaining of the cost paid for upon delivery of the final music. And so that just allows, for me as a composer to have a little bit more stable income, as opposed to, it just being pushed all the way to the very back, right? And so I do believe that's how a lot of composers do it, from what I've heard and for what I've talked to other people. They're going to at least require some sort of down, deposit, is the right word for that. And then the remainder of it due at the end of the commission. But in order to actually make it much more affordable, another option that I do know that a lot of composers will offer is, of course, payment plans. And so this is essentially where, hey, just like payment plans you're familiar with, right, on a day-to-day basis, is you can just split up the cost over multiple months or maybe even multiple years, especially if you need to wait for a budget reset. You can pay half, you could pay half of the cost in, April of one year and then pay the other half in September of the following year. And you've now split that cost up over 2 years, but it's still within a year that commission was being done. And so at least for me, that's something I would be open to as a composer that I have been open to in the past. And so that is one way you can kind of essentially, in a way, cut the cost in half, but just split it up over multiple years. And another big option that a lot of composers will do is what is called forming a consortium. And so what a consortium is where you and any number of other ensembles are splitting the cost of the one commission. And so what this is going to do is that each of you are going to be able to premiere the piece and receive that credit on the sheet music. So essentially it's going to be, maybe High School A and High School B are in a consortium together and they commission from this one composer. And so one school pays half, the other school pays the other half. And now both of them have their name on the music and both get to premiere the piece. Okay. And you might be asking yourself, okay, well, how can it really be a premiere if one is probably going to perform it first, and the other one is second? Well, depending on where the schools are located or where the ensembles are located, you can formulate a premiere to be however you want, right? So you could have the Western U.S. premiere and the Eastern U.S. premiere, or the North Side premiere and the South Side premiere, or it could be whatever, right? But you just call it a premiere and still hype it up as a big deal. And in my eyes, that is a premiere. And like for me as a composer, I'm going to promote it that way as well. Like that is just as big a deal. So again, you can kind of make that fit to whatever your needs are. And so consortium is a great model. It doesn't have to be just 2 schools or 2 ensembles. It could be 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, however many. And so obviously the more ensembles involved, the more affordable it's going to be for everybody. So if being the only one to have credit for the commission is not a big deal to you, then by all means, call up another director in your district, call up another community choir or whatever. And it could be a really, really cool opportunity, not just to have a premiere and commission a composer, but also to kind of have that connection with other ensembles. And then finally, one other thing that should definitely not be discounted on how you could actually make a commission more affordable is by offering certain opportunities for the composer that would be very, very valuable to them. This is especially applicable to younger composers, which I definitely fit into this category, and that's why I'm bringing it up. And this is offering things like, hey, we're going to get you a really high quality video and audio recording of the premiere that you can use on, your social media and things like that. Or maybe we're going to be performing this at the Texas Music Educators Association conference next year, or American Choral Directors Association, or some sort of big high publicity performance. That definitely holds huge value, especially for someone like me. I might even go as far to say, oh yeah, I will write you this if it means I'm getting a performance at this big venue, at this big event. And so that is definitely something that is also very, very valuable. And so it's not always just money, right? It's the experience and other things of value that you could offer to a composer that should definitely not be forgotten about. So overall, that's just a really fast crash course of what a commission can look like. Once again, I said it so much, I'll say it one more time. The process could vary. It could look a little different from composer to composer. And hey, again, I've only been composing for it's been 8 years now. So I feel like I've done a few commissions at this point, but I'm definitely still learning about what the process looks like for other composers and still implementing new ideas and new things that I can do to really make the commission process even better for me and for those that are commissioning me. And so I'm sure this might change for me over the next few years as well, but that's where I'm at right now. And I hope this has been beneficial to you and giving you a little bit better idea, at least a starting point, if you've never commissioned a composer before, what that could look like. But I feel like if there's one thing I want you to remember from this whole episode, it is this: it is much more possible to do a commission than you might realize. And composers want to make that possible for you. I at least definitely do not have the view of just, well, I just want to make money, right? Obviously that's a big part of it, but that is not the number one goal. My number one goal as a composer is to give you and your students an experience through music that you are never going to forget and that is going to make a difference in the lives of those that perform it and that listen to it. And so to me, that is such an important duty that I want to carry out, and that's why I do it. That's why I do commissions. And so it's just a great privilege for me to be able to work with ensembles that do this sort of thing. And so with that being said, if you feel like, hey, maybe I might want to work with Christian on a commission sometime in the future. Hey, I would love to work with you. Or maybe you still have just more questions about something I talked about on this episode. Well, you can always reach out to me. My email is christian@christianfortnermusic.com. And you can also reach out to me over social media. You could always message the Beyond the Measure Instagram account, which is linked in the description of this episode. Send us a DM and we can get in touch that way. And so again, I'm just here to serve you as a composer because I want to do everything I can to, number one, equip music educators, number two, grow performers, and number three, most importantly, inspire listeners. But you can't inspire listeners unless the composers, the educators, and the performers are all working together to make that happen. And so that is my number one goal for you. If that sounds like something you want to be a part of, you can learn more about me and commissioning me at www.christianfortnermusic.com/commission. And I will look forward to talking to you and see what we can do going into this next year. Get some new music created, really inspire a lot of people. That'd be lots of fun. So, alrighty. Well, thank y'all again so much for listening today. Once again, my name is Christian. We'll see you next week on Beyond the Measure, podcast for music educators. Thank you so much for listening to this week's episode of Beyond the Measure, a podcast for music educators. We hope you learned something that will help you stress less about how to teach so that you can focus more on who you're teaching. If you enjoyed the episode, please leave us a rating and review, subscribe, and share this podcast with other music educators. See you in the next one.